All right, so the next components we're going to talk about influencing microbial growth are going to be pH, salt, barometric pressure. I'll be honest, I'm not real concerned that you worry too much about radiation, although that can affect bacterial growth in that radiation can damage DNA. If you damage DNA, it's going to inhibit bacteria from growing, okay? pH, you are going to have kind of three categories, again, like we had with temperature. We're going to have the acidophiles. We're going to have the neurophiles. And then we've got alkaline. Okay? So this would be low pH. This would be a neutral pH. Let's put the L in there. This would be a high pH. All right. In terms of those neurophiles, these again are going to be where our pathogens come into play. If you have bacteria that live in very acidic environments, they're typically not pathogenic. There are exceptions to that because we're talking biology. All right. One big exception to that, Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is the bacteria that causes stomach and small intestine ulcers. It's a bacteria, it's a spirochete, and it grows best at very low pH. And the pH of your stomach is about a pH of 2, which is a very low pH. That's why those bacteria can survive there, okay? So that is one example of an acidophile that is a pathogen, all right? The majority of pathogens that are out there in the environment are neutrophiles, which means they're going to grow best at a neutral pH. And the pH of your body overall is neutral. You have some exceptions to that. Your sweat is slightly acidic, your urine is slightly acidic, but for the most part, your body runs around a pH of 7, all right? Your blood is actually a little alkaline. By I mean like 7.4 instead of 7. But, you know, in and around neutral is where those pathogens. High pH, again, those are very specific types of bacteria, not typically pathogenic to us, all right? So the pH of the environment can affect how the bacteria grows. If you put a pathogen into an acidic environment that's typically a neutrophile, it's going to typically kill it, all right? That's why it's an advantage having a low pH in your stomach, because that low pH in your stomach, if you happen to consume a pathogen, those pathogens can potentially be destroyed within the stomach, and they're not going to make you sick. Keep in mind with that, though, you do have an influence of numbers. We're talking about getting a fairly low dose of bacteria in for your stomach to be able to kill those bacteria so they don't survive within your system. If you get a higher dose of those bacteria, for example, because you left your potato salad sitting out during 4th of July, there's bacteria that's growing within that potato salad. When it gets to a high enough level, it actually can make you sick, all right? Because some of those bacteria are able to escape the acidic environment. They get further down in the intestinal tract where things become neutralized. They start growing and they wreak havoc, okay? So in terms of that, pH can affect how bacteria grow. Salt is another component that can impact microbial growth. Typically what we're talking about there are going to be halophiles. Halophiles are bacteria that grow in high salt concentrations. So if you go to the Great Salt Lake in Utah, there are bacteria that are living within that lake, okay? They're halophiles. They've adapted to deal with the high salt. Essentially what those halophiles have done, all right, is they've adapted so that the hypertonic environment doesn't dehydrate the bacteria, okay? So they found some ways to evolve and get around that, okay? So hypertonic is going to be a high salt environment. Hypotonic is going to be a low salt environment, all right? Isotonic, you're going to have essentially equal salt requirements in and out of the cell, all right? So in terms of that, halophiles are the bacteria that live in high salt environments. These typically are not bacteria that are going to make you sick, all right? And in terms of that, where that comes into play, especially in the food industry, if you get halophiles that contaminate or get into a food that is preserved essentially with high salt, you can select for those bacteria to grow, all right? Now, typically those halophiles are not going to make you sick, but if you get something that is contaminated or has something growing on it, it's not appealing. You don't want to eat it, all right? So really where halophiles wreak havoc are in the food industry, okay? So pH, salt. Last one we've got is barometric pressure. Excuse me. Where barometric pressure comes into play, really, are in ocean environments. So way deep down in the ocean, there are vents down on the ocean floor where there are many bacterial colonies. You've got bacteria growing down there on the ocean floor. They've adapted to deal with the high pressure of being down at the bottom of the ocean, all right? So in terms of the barometric pressure, those are going to be barophiles. They're found typically in ocean environments. Not as concerned about you understanding those as I am the first four. So temperature, oxygen, pH, salt, those are the ones you want to concentrate. Those are going to be the main environmental factors that have the biggest impact on bacterial growth. Right? Thank you for your attention.